1997. That was the year Michigan last won a national championship. Until this year. It was also the last time a head coach won a title and didn't return the following season. Until this year. We have all the Harbaugh fallout coming up. Meanwhile, on the other side of the game, Ohio State with quite the reaction to their rivals' championship. Ryan Day didn't just get mad, he got busy. We'll head to Columbus to get the lowdown. Plus, the latest on the new college football 25 video game. Where is it? What is it? Our insider tells all. 247 Sports Live starts right now. Welcome into 247 Sports Live. I'm Emily Proud. We've got a lot to get to on today's show, but first, the usual asks. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Another massive domino falls in the coaching world as Michigan becomes the third college football playoff team to lose its head coach. Jim Harbaugh is back to the NFL after winning the Wolverines' first national championship since 1997. He has accepted the head job at the LA Chargers and now leaves a vacancy at his alma mater. So for more on this, let's welcome in national college football writer Brandon Marcello. Brandon, Harbaugh is a Michigan man through and through, and they actually offered him a contract that would have made him the highest paid coach in college football and also given him immunity from termination for, those two ongoing NCAA investigations. That's a lot to turn down. Why was it not enough for Harbaugh to stick with Michigan?
Well, I think there's several factors here. The way the game has just changed with recruiting, NIL, that entire situation. I don't think you talk to a single head coach in college football that goes, everything's going swimmingly well. I'm loving my quality of life. Number two, he came to Michigan and accomplished what he wanted to accomplish, which was win a national championship. And listen, this is a guy that was almost fired after the 2020 season and had to renegotiate his contract and take a pay cut just to remain there. So he's led that program to the promised land like he promised when he was first hired. And listen, Jim Harbaugh also is an NFL guy. He wants to win a Super Bowl. That's the one thing he really has left to accomplish. And he better strike while the time is hot, and now is the time to do that. And then, of course, there are the looming NCAA investigations going on right now. Will there be penalties coming from that? The feeling is that there will be penalties. And as we saw this past year with him having to sit out for 3-4 games as a head coach, does he want to have to deal with that again for the next year, 2, or even 3, and potentially postseason sanctions? Again, a lot of speculation out there. Those things have not been settled. And so right now, why not go out on top and then go to the NFL and try to win a Super Bowl?
You mentioned the multiple investigations, but you also have a national championship. So in terms of setting this program up for success moving forward, what kind of shape is Harbaugh leaving things in Ann Arbor?
I think it's pretty great. I think a lot of people just assume they're losing a lot, but they're losing some big names at the big positions. J.J. McCarthy, Blake Corum. But listen, Donovan Edwards at running back exploded in the national championship game. He only touched the ball 6 times, but had over 100 yards and some big plays to seal that victory. They've got a defensive tackle tandem in Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant that are maybe the best in college football going into next season. They got a great secondary. And of course, the thing is they got to keep this roster together. But what they have right now on paper is pretty darn good and a top 10 type team going into next season.
They also have a really good head coaching candidate on staff right now in Chiron Moore, who went 4-0 as an interim head coach, filling in for Jim Harbaugh during those multiple suspensions this season. So it sounds like it might be a matter of if, or not of when, not if, that he will become the head coach. What's the latest you can tell us on Chiron Moore's chances of landing this job?
Yeah, the industry is just buzzing. It's just a matter of when they announce this hire. There were reports out there that Michigan, as a university, is required to post the job for 7 days before they make a hire. Well, there is a waiver that they can apply to within their own human resources department at the University of Michigan to get that done. So this is something that'll probably be done by the weekend, from what I understand. And Chiron Moore is in line to become the next head coach there. Barring something unforeseen, I would be surprised if Chiron Moore is not the next head coach of the University of Michigan, and that would be huge for them and keeping that roster intact. As we mentioned, that is crucial. A lot of great pieces coming back as it stands now, but the transfer portal window just opened for Michigan. You lose your head coach, you have 30 days as a player on that roster to enter the portal and leave and go elsewhere. What's really working in Michigan's favor here is actually the timing. If this happened a week ago, like a lot of us maybe were thinking, you may be seeing some Michigan players already in the portal and maybe in droves. But right now, because of the academic calendar, it's difficult to go enroll somewhere and add a class at a different university. Ohio State, for example, their add drop deadline was January 19th. Now, there are some schools elsewhere where that deadline is extended. So, for example, as we're seeing today and the last couple of days, Ole Miss keeps adding players. We're like, how's this happening? The semester already started. Well, their add drop deadline's not until February 7th. So they're adding players as they keep going along here. Michigan, their add drop deadline is January 25th, from what I understand. So these next 6 to 7 days, very crucial as far as the roster management here. But if the feeling is that Chiron Moore is going to be the guy, then he could probably hold that entire roster together. And if they do lose a player or two, it won't really hurt them all that bad.
The good thing about this situation, too, is as much as you want to compare it to when Nick Saban retired and it was open season on that roster, that was a surprise. Harbaugh has been flirting with the NFL for a very long time, actually took an interview with an NFL team on signing day back in 2022. So this should not have surprised anybody within the Michigan program, and I don't think that it did. But looking at Harbaugh as a whole, I mean, he took Michigan to the mountaintop of college football. So in your eyes, Brandon, what will be his legacy at Michigan?
Well, it'll be right up there with the greats there. He will be revered. Even if there is fallout from these NCAA investigations, he will be a legend there. He's the epitome of a Michigan man. He was that amazing gunslinging quarterback in the 80s and, of course, had a great NFL career. Came back to his alma mater, led them to a national championship. They were 40-3 these last 3 seasons. He was an energetic coach, someone who's fiery on the sidelines, had a heck of a personality. I know just as a reporter, I'm going to miss having him in college football because of just his crazy antics and the way he approached life. But in the end, he's going to be a legend there, and I wouldn't be surprised that someday he's got a statue or something else there on the Michigan campus. He went out on top. I mean, I look at this in like TV terms. It's like the ending of Seinfeld. Why let that thing keep going? Go out while you're on top. And while the ending may have been a little controversial, in the end, we all enjoyed it, and he did what he came out to accomplish to do, and that's win a national championship and leave those Michigan fans happy.
Based on the quotes I hear from John Harbaugh, I would not be surprised if he was also a Seinfeld fan. I love that comparison. Brandon, that's it for this segment. You're actually going to be back later on the show for a really fun conversation. A lot of people in the chat right now are psyched for this. He's going to give us some updates on the status of EA Sports' college football video game, so stick around for that. Speaking of the chat, you're also going to hang around and answer some questions that people have, so go ahead, get to typing. Brandon Marcello, thank you so much.
I'll be there.
I appreciate it. All right, we're going to continue the conversation here in studio with our national college football analyst, Smoke Dixon, and of course the coach, Carl Reed. You guys have some great perspective on everything that's happening in Ann Arbor. And looking back, we talked about the legacy, and I'm going to ask you guys that question in just a bit. But things were not always super rosy at Michigan with Harbaugh. Brandon Marcello mentioned it. People wanted him fired after the 2020 season. But Smoke, maybe what are some lessons that other programs can learn about the administration's patience with Harbaugh?
Well, at the end of the day, when you're building something, you can't just build something in a hurry. Like, we live in a microwave society where everybody goes and pushes a button, you get a great meal. But from the meals that we're used to, grandma and mom sat all day and made that meal well. So you have to understand that you got to have a guy that's going to be able to steady the course. Understand that they have to build a foundation. And when you're building a foundation, you got to get your people in line and have a culture built there. So when you have adversity, you can get through it. But if you're looking at just, we got to win next year. If we don't win next year, we're getting ready. No. Steady the course. Understand who you're working with. And knowing that this guy that you had, Jim Harbaugh, is a championship winner. He won at San Diego, Stanford, and he also won at San Francisco. So it's just a matter of time that when you study guys like this, when you're an AD, you still got to evaluate coaches as well too. You can't just go in and say, if you're not winning, you can't play. I mean, you can't do it anymore. Study the course, take your time, and allow this course to run through so you can build a proper foundation and build a program to win for the long term.
People don't understand, Smoke, how hard it is to win at football. And so when you get somebody like a Jim Harbaugh and you give him the opportunity to run his program the way he wants, put his staff in place the way he wants to put it in play, and to get to do things the way he wants to do it, it takes some time, but when it gets figured out, now you're talking about big-time winning football, and Michigan stayed out the way. They allowed him to build his program. They allowed him to do it in his image, the way that he wanted to do it, and they reaped the benefits of it by winning a national championship in the end.
Yeah, let me tell you how rare that is. Schools are spending more than $125 million on buyouts alone this offseason. I know a lot of that is Jimbo Fisher, but it's still a ton of money. So some of that patience can help you financially as well. I know Michigan fans aren't super patient when it comes to finding out who their next head coach is, and it sounds like it's got to be offensive coordinator Chiron Moore. I mean, he is widely seen as the front runner for this job. 4-0 as an interim this year, just his ability to stabilize this program. But Carl, what did you see from him this season when he stepped in an interim role, and just his experience as a whole in college football that makes him the man for this job?
Not only did he step in an interim role, he won some big games. You're talking about beating Penn State, beating Ohio State when he was the head coach in those games, winning and doing that. Even before that, Joe Moore award-winning offensive line coach, best offensive line in the country the last several years. He recruited him. Michigan has always wanted a Michigan man, and typically that means somebody that graduated from Michigan. But his apprenticeship to Jim Harbaugh is going to qualify him as somebody who's going to be considered a Michigan man, knows that program inside out. The kids in that program love him, the coaches. For them to continue to have continuity and the way that that program is set up, you're going to minimize the amount of players that go in the transfer portal by staying with Chiron Moore, letting them continue to take the program forward. I think nothing else makes sense for Michigan.
Well, when you look at it and you're judging a coach, I will always judge a coach by how do you handle adversity. And at Michigan, this was probably the most adverse time in our college football. We've never had anything like what was going on in Michigan. And what did he end up doing? Penn State, bust him in their mouth. Buckeyes, bust him in their mouth. And on top of that, he held his team together while his boss was out of the building. So how can you not want somebody like that that's going to galvanize your team, bring your team together? Last time I checked, that's what a coach is supposed to do. And you know what the players do? They play for him, and they love playing for Michigan, but they also love playing for Coach Moore.
You talk about the stabilizing force that is Chiron Moore. That was obviously evident during the season and very important when Jim Harbaugh was suspended for 6 games. But it's going to be even more important now that this transfer portal window is open. They're going through a coaching change and everything that's happening in the world of college football. You need that stability. So, Smoke, what happens if they open this search up beyond Chiron Moore?
Well, we just saw something happen down in Tuscaloosa that we never thought was going to happen. Guys just getting up and leaving Nick Saban in the mecca of college football, which is Alabama. And you have this guy walk out of your building. I mean, forget the tears and all that other stuff. But these guys love playing for him. You take him out the building, bring somebody else in, those guys are leaving left and right. They're not probably leaving out this window, but when it comes to the spring window, you're going to have a team that might win 5 games, depending on who you bring in. Because when you have a team that's that connected emotionally and then build a culture and understand exactly what they are supposed to do, when they're supposed to do it, how they're supposed to do it, you bring somebody in there new, that takes you about 2 to 3 years just to build that culture back up.
Mm-hmm.
It would be catastrophic for Michigan to not hire Chiron Moore. Jim Harbaugh built one of the last programs based on family, based on culture, based on emotion. You use that word emotion. And so if you take the guy that is a huge fabric of that in Chiron Moore and don't give him the job, you're going to put everybody's emotions in the wrong place. And you're going to have a mass exodus of players in the transfer portal. You're going to have guys that sign with you on National Signing Day that went out. And you're going to upset the high school coaches in that part of the country who also want to see Chiron Moore be the coach at Michigan.
What's the most important coach when you hire somebody? What's the first guy you're going to hire? You've been a head coach.
You hire your offensive line coach. First hire you make.
And that's the 5 guys you got to keep intact.
Yeah.
That's the guy that keeps the glue of your offense together. You're coaching the most guys on the team. Mm-hmm. And those guys have to be, they work together. They don't get any glory. No one knows anything about them except the person that's coaching them. And if you have a group of guys, and there's not first rounders in that group. They're just hard-working guys that just bust people's face up and down the field. And when you have that, and you take away a guy that has that group and have the core and the heart of your team and the heartbeat of your team, you take them away, you're losing your team for years, just not for that season.
Okay, guys, real quick. Whoever ends up being the head coach, what are reasonable expectations in year one, Carl?
Well, reasonable that they would compete for a Big Ten title again and find a spot in the Big 12 playoffs. But in the 12-team playoff. But when you look at the University of Michigan being a blue blood and their expectations, besides Lloyd Carr and Jim Harbaugh, do you remember any coach between those two guys? Those are the two guys that won championships. And before Lloyd was Bo Schembechler, right? Those are the only three guys that people remember in Michigan. So when you take over the job at the University of Michigan, you know absolutely what the assignment is to put them in position to win national championships. And that's just the way that it is. And Chiron Moore or any other coach that comes into that position knows what that job is, and this is the life that you chose.
It's easy. Beat the Buckeyes, compete for a national championship. Anything less, uncivilized.
It's easy. I like it. I said quick, and that was quick. Thank you both so much for the great discussion. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that like button. And Smoke's going to be back on just a little bit later, so don't go anywhere. But make sure that you are checking out the 247Sports website for unrivaled coverage of college football and recruiting. We'll have more discussions just like this on there. Our national writers are all over the major headlines in the world of college football, so lock in to 247sports.com. There's also an entire portion of the website dedicated to our coverage of the transfer portal, and the Ohio State page has been quite active lately. The Buckeyes adding quarterbacks like 2024 five-star Julian Sayin and Kansas State's Will Howard. They're also adding one of the top overall players in the country in Caleb Downs, among many other moves that we have to discuss. So for more on the state of the Buckeyes, we say hello to Dave Biddle of Bucknuts.com. Dave, I know you've been very busy lately tracking all of this, but before we talk about Michigan's top rival, I got to ask, on a day like today, coming off of yesterday's news, what are your thoughts on the coaching change from the team up north?
Yeah, it's not a surprise, Emily. I figured that he would be off to the NFL, and the Chargers seemed like a good landing spot to have a good NFL quarterback at the very least. He might be a great one in Herbert. Makes a lot of sense. Harbaugh, of course, finished his career with the Chargers. He spent his entire head coaching career in the state of California, except, of course, at Michigan. He came to Michigan and accomplished what he wanted to accomplish. There could be some NCAA penalties coming down the pike. Who knows? It makes a lot of sense. He's going out with the national championship. Now he's going to go back to the NFL and try and finish business that maybe he feels like is unfinished, considering the fact he got to a Super Bowl with the 49ers. So it makes a lot of sense. I would have been very surprised, Emily, if he would have come back to Michigan for another year.
Yes, I think that is the general thought among people, is it's not shock. We were waiting for this to happen. Let's talk about the Buckeyes, though. Football, of course, has always been king at Ohio State. But lately, it seems like the commitment has ramped up quite a bit. You've got new leadership in the building, a revamped NIL department, and collective has just been on fire lately. So what do you think has led to some of these big moves recently?
Yeah, the boosters getting ticked off. I would use a stronger word. It's a family show. That's really what it is. The big money boosters are ticked off. Losing to Michigan 3 straight years. And Ohio State's been very close. I mean, think about the Georgia game the previous year. If they, kick a field goal, they probably win the national championship. Play Georgia, tooth and nail, and they're pretty much in their backyard in Atlanta. And then even Michigan this year lose to 6 on the road at Michigan. So they've been close, but boosters are upset. Close doesn't count in college football. So, you lose to Michigan 3 straight years, especially, Emily, after the Buckeyes dominated Michigan for so long. And then to see Michigan win the national championship, I know Ohio State fans didn't want to suffer through that Cotton Bowl. That might have been a necessary evil because that also added to it, getting embarrassed in the Cotton Bowl. You add it all together, all of Ohio State's big money boosters are ticked off, and they are, doing whatever they can as far as NIL and the transfer portal and recruiting and keeping their players.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We're going to talk about all the different levels of the way that these boosters have been, as you say, in our PG show, ticked off. Certainly, you're seeing that reaction, though. But one more newness to this group. Bill O'Brien tabbed as the next offensive coordinator. He's led NFL teams. He's held the same role under Nick Saban. I mean, he's got the resume, but what kind of impact will this hire be for Ohio State?
Yeah, very interesting hire. If you're an Ohio State fan, I think you should be happy what this represents, because I think most of the best head football coaches, Emily, are CEOs. There are exceptions to the rule. If you're calling plays now with everything else that's on your plate, especially for a college football head coach, and you're dealing with NIL, the transfer portal, and everything else, that's just too much on your plate. I think Ryan Day finally realized that, even though this was tough for him, because that's what he's known for best, is calling plays and being, an offensive guru. But bringing Bill O'Brien in, it checks a lot of boxes. As you mentioned, head coaching experience in the NFL, had a winning record in the NFL. I think Bill O'Brien wasn't a good GM in the NFL, but he did have a winning record, got to the playoffs 4 straight times. We could go down the list of college coaches that were not successful in the NFL that were great college coaches, like Nick Saban, Steve Spurrier, Urban Meyer, on and on and on. So I think, time will tell, but I think this is a really good hire for Ryan Day and the Buckeyes, both what Bill O'Brien brings and what it represents that Ryan Day is now stepping back and is becoming more of a CEO.
Yeah, and it might have already helped them in the portal with Julian Sayin potentially having that relationship with Bill O'Brien. So let's go ahead and talk about the portal being really good to the Buckeyes this month. You've got Caleb Downs, as I mentioned, Julian Sayin, Will Howard, Quinshon Judkins, Seth McLaughlin. That should be plenty, but what do you expect their activity will potentially look like during the spring window?
Yeah, that'll be interesting. I think they're either done or they're going to add an offensive lineman, in my opinion. And I think they want to add an offensive lineman if they can, but they're not trying to add a depth piece. They got plenty of depth. They can find, for example, a plug-and-play right tackle. You're not going to get a first-round pick or anything in the portal, but if you can get a guy that could be like Ohio State had a transfer a few years ago, Jonah Jackson, who now plays for the Detroit Lions. He was a 3rd-round pick by the Lions. He came to Ohio State for 1 year from Rutgers. He was a guard, not a tackle. Someone like that who could be like a really solid 1-year starter and, a right tackle, not a guard, and then be, a solid NFL draft pick. That's what Ohio State's going to be looking for when the next window opens after spring. Will they find that? I don't know. They do have some in-house candidates. They do have 4 starters returning on their offensive line. But that was the biggest concern on the team this past year, I guess quarterback as well. But so that would be the one thing to look at. They might add a right tackle or they might be done.
Something tells me they're not done, though, based on what we've seen them do this month. But certainly you will not be done when it comes to covering the Ohio State Buckeyes. Dave Biddle, thank you so much for being here. You can check out more of his work at bucknuts.com. If you're like me and can't possibly keep track of all the news coming out of Columbus lately, keep it locked in to Dave and the crew over at bucknuts.com. Well, lately it's been more out than in for Alabama, but Kalen DeBoer landing his first big fish as the head coach of the Crimson Tide. The number 8 player in the 2024 class, Ryan Williams, commits to Alabama. If his name sounds familiar to you, that's because he decommitted following Saban's retirement, so DeBoer able to convince him to come back. And speaking of coming back, Smoke Dixon back here on the show to talk more about this. Before we get into really what this means for DeBoer, because this is a big win for his tenure to begin at Alabama, who is Ryan Williams, the player?
Ryan Williams is a playmaker with the ball in his hands. And he's a deceptively explosive athlete. And I use that word carefully because he's one of those guys that if you drive a stick shift, he's a guy that can go in the first and look real smooth. Second, third, fourth, fifth, and still look the same as he's running, but he's running by you. And for a high school guy, his ability to run routes and catch the ball naturally, I know they just lost Isaiah Bond, but this guy is a better receiver. Isaiah was faster, straight line speed, but this guy can get in and out of cuts, and he's a little bit more dangerous with the ball in his hands because his change of direction, his short area quickness is better.
He also reclassified from the 2025 class, so he is a little bit younger, which means there's a lot more to work with there too. He has quite a bright future. We talked about this in the office today. It's pretty rare that you see a player decommit and then recommit. This is a unique situation though, but what kind of statement was just made by Kalen DeBoer?
Well, every big-time coach always needs a big-time recruit to validate who they are. And I think Nick Saban's guy was Julio and Mark Ingram. Ryan Williams is Kalen's guy, and they're tied by the hip. They're together. As we look at the Alabama Lords forever, these two guys are going to be together. And you just need that, because if you don't have that, especially in the state of Alabama, it's going to be hard to pull those other 5 stars and 4-star players along the way too.
Yeah, certainly hoping this has a trickle-down effect and the floodgates will continue to open for Alabama recruiting. Elsewhere on the trail, though, Clemson with a big win, and Ari Watford, the second-ranked edge in the 2025 class, committing to the Tigers yesterday. What can he bring to Dabo's squad?
Well, this is the Clemson guy. I mean, just knowing him and being around him, he wants culture. But forget the culture part of it. You have a guy that can go into any room in the United States, stretches his arms out, and he's touching each wall. That's how long he is. Explosive athlete that with his wide wingspan and his broad shoulders, at 220 pounds, being 6'5", this guy can get up to 270 pounds and be an effective edge rusher with the ability to set the edge, but also has some creative and deceptive quickness and explosiveness to be a really good pass rusher.
Same way that Alabama is hoping that Ryan Williams is a catapult to success. Clemson, of course, hoping that this is also leading to more success, because you remember not too long ago, 6 years ago, Dabo had 2 national championships and was recruiting top 10 classes on the regular. Now they're coming off the most losses they've had in a season since 2011, and they haven't had a top 10 recruiting class over the last 2 cycles. So what does the future look like for Clemson?
Well, I don't think the future is real bright for Clemson in terms of understanding the landscape of what recruiting is. This is a transition business, and Coach Sweeney is a guy that's been built on culture and getting young men to be better men as they get older and be grown-ups. And when you look at it today, that's not the way that college football in the recruiting world is being ran. Mm-hmm. Getting Chris Rump back in is good, but until he sets up a true personnel department and allows the collective to work in his favor, because he can be one of those marquee programs in terms of Clemson, and it once was, but he's outdated. Recruiting and the college landscape is getting ahead of him. Mm-hmm. And if he's not willing to make the changes, like the same results that you saw last year in the losses you're going to see, because in order to go out there and run the Kentucky Derby, you're going to need some thoroughbreds. And if you don't have thoroughbreds, you can get some mules and go out there, but all you're going to be doing is getting mud kicked in your face. And right now, you got a lot of mud kicked in his face. And for an intelligent man like Coach Sweeney is, at some point he needs to figure it out, but I doubt it, because he's that stubborn as well too.
Okay, we'll see. We always appreciate you coming on and telling the truth and telling it like it is. We appreciate the honesty. Smoke, thanks so much.
Appreciate
Hey, let's rewind back to the night of the national championship game. During the actual game, the talk on Twitter was about a different game, the new NCAA video game, or its official name, learn this, College Football 25. Fans were, as you can see by the tweets, upset because they were hoping to see a trailer for the game and didn't. So let's welcome Brandon Marcello back onto the show. And Brandon, I know fans want an answer. You would love to answer this question, so I'll get right to it. Where was the trailer?
There was never a trailer. Ever. We reported at 247Sports the Friday before the national championship game that EA Sports was preparing to release more info. A lot of fan blogs took that to mean, oh, a teaser trailer's coming. They're going to put it up on the national championship game. No, what we were told was that some information was being prepared to be shared with fans. My understanding was it's kind of going to be like a blog post that EA Sports was going to release. For whatever reason, they got cold feet and did not release that. We've had some blowback from some people at EA Sports and some fans, obviously, but we never reported that a trailer was going to be released. And for some reason, fan blogs took that and blew it up. But what I can say is that some people, including inside EA Sports, were surprised that no information was released that night on national championship night. And yet we're still here waiting. And of course, that prompts questions about, is the game still coming? Is it still happening? Yes, it's still coming, and we'll talk about that more here, but there was never going to be a trailer released on national championship night.
Glad we cleared that up. While we all patiently wait, let's talk about the game itself. What can you tell us about some of the game modes that are featured in this new edition?
Well, as we've previously reported over the last year and a half on this, there's going to be some variation of previous game modes that you saw a decade ago. That, of course, being Road to Glory and Dynasty mode, for example. There will be online play, of course, as we all know. But what I can share here right now that I've learned here recently is that, much like the Madden game, there will be an Ultimate Team mode, which will include, at least the plan is, legends from college football past able to be played now and in the future. So, potentially, these are not names that I have confirmed or anything like that, so potentially you could see, say, Cam Newton in the game once again. You could see Tom Brady in a Michigan uniform once again. Or maybe some of those famous quarterbacks at Nebraska running the midline option and running the I formation. That is potentially coming. They have been working on trying to secure likeness rights for some of these former players so that they can ramp up this ultimate team mode, which will allow you to be playing college football legends. Very exciting stuff.
Whew, I'm just thinking of the player combinations that we could put together. That's really exciting. You mentioned the current players, though. So how is EA working on getting players involved in the game?
Yeah, they've partnered with one team, which is an NIL group, which simply put, this is how it's going to work out, everybody. They've got an app, and much like all these NIL marketplaces. So what they're going to do is that when a lot of these players get on campus, later in spring or this first summer semester in May, they're going to go up to the players all collectively and go, listen, if you want to be in the EA Sports college football game this summer, you need to opt in by going into this app and signing away your NIL rights so we can put you in the game. EA Sports has been working for quite some time on developing likeness and everything for players to prepare. But if players do not opt in, those players will not be included in the game. If they do, they will obviously be in the game. EA Sports has been preparing, of course, for the possibility, which is probably likely, that not every player is going to say yes. So the question is how do they deal with that? How do you kind of supplant a player with another that quote-unquote doesn't exist? Because remember, the reason why NCAA football for a lot of reasons went away, one of the crucial reasons was name, image, and likeness, them duplicating the look of a player without actually saying it was that player, just saying it was player number 8 instead of your superstar quarterback. So that's something to watch here. They have not yet signed any players or anybody like that officially, but again, this is going to be almost like throwing a net out there. You go click a button in this app and you're in the game, and then EA Sports will work furiously over the next 2 months to make sure these rosters are as up to date as possible.
Yeah, those old rosters were so subtle. We had no idea who any of the players are. It's going to be really interesting when we see actual players involved in this. There's also the factor of the schools. What does EA's relationship look like with some of those universities as they work together to revive this game?
Yeah, for several years, they've been working on this game, as you guys know, and they've been working with CLC, Collegiate Licensing Company, which represents most of the schools in Division I FBS, to get as many digital assets as possible. And as you're seeing on the screen, for example, digital assets like Ohio State. So they're asking all these schools for, listen, give us the best pictures of your stadium, every nook and cranny. Give us game day sounds. Give us your fight songs, any other songs your band plays, any other game day traditions that you can photograph or put on video for us so we can put into the game. Now, not all schools have been as forthcoming with information to EA Sports, whether through just reluctance or just pure laziness or forgetfulness. I've seen some open records requests, including at Arkansas State, where EA Sports was reaching out to all these schools going, please send us all these assets. And they weren't cooperating, whether it was through laziness or just reluctance or forgetfulness. And at some points, EA Sports has had to go reach out to third parties and hire their own videographers and photographers and tell some of these schools, listen, we're going to come there here in a week or two and take the photos ourselves and get this done so we can create these digital assets. EA Sports has been very aggressive with this, and there have been deadlines going far back as 2 years ago that had been broken by some of these schools. So EA Sports was like, listen, it's been 3 months past the deadline. We got to get this done. So EA Sports took it upon themselves. Listen, we're sending someone in. Open the gates for us. Turn on your water fountain that you have out there in the end zone. We need pictures.
Yeah, I mean, they realize how important it is. If you're going to do a game about college football, you have to have all of the pageantry involved. So I like the effort that's being put in there. Another big part of this is cover art. And let's be real, that's kind of come under some scrutiny lately with sports video games. There's, the Madden curse, and you can believe in it all you want. But what intel do you have as for a potential cover athlete?
My sources in EA Sports have been super secretive about what they're going to do with the cover. The feeling was as far back as a year and a half ago that we need to have a current player on there. And the feeling is that that's probably still going to be the case. But again, they've gone quiet. My sources have gone quiet about what's going to happen with the cover athlete. And even today I saw, talk about weird timing, I saw some rumors out there about EA Sports filming a commercial at the Rose Bowl a couple of days ago, according to a photo that surfaced on Instagram. I have not been able to confirm that yet because I just learned that actually from our 247 Sports chat. So interesting thing to watch there. What are they preparing for if there was a commercial shot? But the cover athlete, is it athletes? I mean, could it be Nick Saban, the GOAT, the NCAA EA Sports College Football GOAT edition? Who knows? Again, they've been very secretive around this. I have not been able to crack that egg.
Okay. Well, you've been able to crack a lot of eggs. We appreciate you, I'll say it, making an omelet for us. Brandon, thank you so much for being on the show multiple times today. And thank you for watching. One more reminder to hit that like button. Make sure you are subscribed. And I got to tell you about one more thing that the 247 Sports YouTube channel is doing, because check it out. We don't just celebrate National Signing Day. We have a National Signing Week, and we are all over it. So this is when our actual show is going to be. It's from 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock Eastern, but throughout the week we'll be dropping content. So make sure you tune in then. Thanks so much for watching.